Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On the show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions, capital raising, joint ventures, strategic alliances, real estate, affiliate and sponsorship deals, and more, including smaller deals that you can do without significant capital. My name is Corey Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for over 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the DealQuest podcast. Let's get started. Bill Davey is an accomplished entrepreneur, author, and business automation expert based in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. With a degree in finance from the University of Central Oklahoma and a wealth of experience across multiple industries, Bill has sold over 25,000 security projects and has had multi-million-dollar exits, owning more than 20 different companies. Slacker, only 20 companies, huh? As a founder of GlobeLink Systems and IMAX Digital, he focuses on empowering businesses with technology-driven solutions and effective marketing strategies. He's also a proud member of Entrepreneurs Organization, which we have in common,
yes,
and author of Big Hat, No Cattle, and is currently working on a book about success and religious values. Passionate about sharing his experiences, Bill helps others grow their businesses and achieve success through strong SOPs and practical automation. Bill, welcome to the DealQuest podcast.
Thank you, Corey. Good to see you again.
Listen, I'm so excited to have you on, not just because you're a fellow EO buddy and entrepreneur, and because, you know, your entrepreneurial journey, 20 companies and exits are a story, but also because I know we're going to talk about, and you've been really sort of willing and open to talk about a topic that's important to me and that we've touched on the podcast of late, you know, around founder depression and what happens post-exit, even in situations where people have, you know, let's say even life-changing money, you know, on that exit. But before we get there, I want to take you back to when you were a little kid growing up, maybe 8, 10, 12 years old. What did you want to be? Because I'm guessing a serial entrepreneur and author and whatever was probably not it back then, but you tell me.
Well, let's start with the fundamentals. I was not really good at school. I think I learned early on, Corey, that I didn't like people telling me what to do and for me to sit still. And maybe that whole the ADHD philosophy back then was real. There was no cure for it. So that's a struggle, right? But what I did find myself, Corey, which was so cool, selling trinkets door to door. My parents are entrepreneurs too, by the way. So we would mow yards. We'd, door to door, we'd be selling stuff. I think I was even probably selling Cutco knives when I was 14 or 15. I mean, I was good at that, right? Like, and I looked at some of I know you said 8 to 12. Like, what did I really aspire to be? I don't know if I could answer that question right now, but there was something burning there that I was always doing something, right? I've got that burning desire just to do something.
Yeah, it is. And you weren't, it sounds like you had no hesitation to sell, which is something that a lot of people, even in their adulthood, have trouble with.
I'm a 7th generation salesperson. It goes all the way back to the horse trading days in Ireland. All of my family are in sales. I mean, literally, so we can look at the history of 7th generation, and that's no joke.
I love it. One other question looking back, what was your first deal of any type? It could have been something small early in your life or early in your career, or anything you consider a deal.
I mean, I think when I got very lucky. So I went to a lot of private schools, ended up in a public school. You can kind of put the math together on that. But one of the coolest things that ever happened to me, Corey, is I started working for a bank as a freshman in high school. So I still had I was cutting grass, still doing all the stuff. I had restaurant jobs at night. I mean, always just doing stuff. But from a freshman in high school to a senior in college, so 8 years I worked at a bank. So it wasn't really my deal, but I saw the owners of this bank who treated me like family, Corey. And we're talking, I mean, it was insane, but I watched them do really cool deals, like buy a big mall within our community. That was $3.5 million. I got to see the behind the scenes, and then I watched them later sell that for $55 million. So you kind of put all these things together. And I got to tell you, the coolest thing, Corey, as maybe a freshman or a sophomore in college, or even in high school, I didn't even go back that far. One of the owners was a car collector, and he had over warehouses of cars. And when the new 500 SL would come in, he would say, "Hey, I've got to go to Florida for a few weeks. I need this fixed. Do you have a garage?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." He'd give me these cars. I mean, we're talking 16, 17, 18, but that's how much trust we had. So I was living, and I thought I was going to be a banker to be at the end of the day, really. But hanging out with these people was just, Corey, it was cool. It was just so cool. I mean, it was great. I learned a lot. And that's how I learned about my business. That's how it all happened. I had mentors early on. And a lot of people can't say that.
No, that's totally the case, and phenomenal. And you had mentors not only in entrepreneurship and business, generally banking, but it sounds like in deal making as well.
Oh yeah. It's been fun. It's been great.
So listen, your bio says 20 different companies. It says multi-million-dollar exits, plural. I'm sure no matter how successful anybody is, I'm sure all 20 of those companies were not successful exits. There might have been a couple that didn't go as planned, right?
No, of course. You learn from the failures. I had a good analogy that we were just talking about this morning. It's like a good fine wine that the grapes are born and they're harvested in the valley. The peaks are just for view, but you get down in the valley and that's where you learn how to work. And that's where the good grapes and the good wine come from. And it's just a good analogy of, man, I can give you horror story after horror story of being stolen from partners embezzling to, it's kind of in my book too. We talk about, money and capital, and what you see is normally not what you get. So yeah, a lot of struggles and a lot of failures, but I think they're important. I think you're in the same boat, right? Nothing's easy. It takes a lot of practice.
I say this to my friends, my buddies, my clients all the time. And I've subscribed to it. If it were easy, everybody would do it. So,
that's right.
I love that.
It's
a cliche,
yes.
But I love that expression because it's sort of like, it's the reason why being an entrepreneur and easy. Hopefully you get to a point where it gets easier, right?
Maybe.
At some point. But, then again, a lot of people say, well, actually the problems just become bigger, and that's a good sign as well.
True. My favorite EO line, and I know you've heard this one, we both work 80 hours, so we don't have to work 40 type of a deal. I've always thought that was funny as a business owner or an entrepreneur.
I love it. So, so talk to us. Listen, you alluded to partner stealing, so a business partnership is a deal. Talk to us about some of the lessons. Obviously, you don't have to give specifics, but some of the lessons you learned from, good and bad business partnerships. Let's start there.
I think I'm not a good business partner. And I'll put it this way. I've got 3 partners and they're at the house. That's my wife and my 2 daughters. And that's about, are you rowing in the right direction? And a lot of companies we've gotten involved in, we had to put up all the capital, and then the company starts to fall. And then guess what? All of a sudden you're in the driver's seat because you made some bad decisions. I've done business with close friends that didn't work out, and it's like a marriage. Literally it's like a marriage. So, so my wife and I, Andrew, we've been together for 30 some odd years, and we've always run the business together, but we just don't work. We just don't work well with others. I don't know why. I can't explain that, but maybe we've been burned so many times, or I don't know. It's just a really good question. That's something I think about a lot.
Well, listen, one of the things that I think is the most important thing to success, not only in business and life, is self-awareness, right?
Of course.
And sometimes I'm also a believer that, you triple and quadruple down on your strengths. And like some people say, you got to work on all your weaknesses. And I think, I'm a much more, especially in business, you triple, quadruple down on your strengths, and you hire a partner around, your weaknesses. Sure. So that realization that, hey, I'm not a good business partner. That's a good thing to know, right? Maybe as opposed to fighting it, you just say, hey, I've learned my mind.
Here's my weakness. And that's okay, right? I'm okay. I'm not perfect at everything. We have learned that, and we're okay with that.
So talk to us about some of this, the successful exits you had. And before we get it, I know we're going to talk about the part that may come after that, the challenges. Yeah. But before we even get there, just talk to us about, out of these 20 companies, what were these acquisitions? What did the exits look like? How did they come about? Give us a little color.
Yeah. I think the big one we'll talk about is, so I've been an integrator all my life. I started my first integration security company this is going back 30 years. I still own the company, Corey, just so you kind of know. Uh-huh. And it was really amazing that we started giving away alarm systems. Okay. Just like ADT. Everybody's familiar with ADT. I was one of ADT's biggest competitors in Oklahoma. We give these security systems away, 500 to 1500 the value of our investment. So we're more of an investment company, not really a security company. But what we would do there is we would drive the recurring multiple revenue. We call it RMR. Some others call it MRR. And I've done that over 25,000 times. I've done 25,000 security. I mean, I don't even know what the number's up to, but it's a lot. So in our industry, it's a pretty easy model. It's like a stock. It's up, it's down. Sometimes it's 36 months. It can be as high as 48 times your monthly recurring. And that's how we base our exits. Mm-hmm. And this last exit was really interesting because they just bought the book. They didn't take the company. And that was a really fascinating journey on watching someone else take the book of business and not do a very good job on it. And that's another conversation, but it was fascinating. It was really fascinating. And at the time when we looked at the model, we basically said, I remember talking, it was right before Hillary was, or Trump was put in office and beat Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
And we looked at that we could technically make more money not working than working. Does that make sense?
Say more about it.
You got enough capital coming in that it's going to spit off enough money that it's producing more than what the business could do.
Yes.
And that was our whole reason for doing that. But, and then it was an interesting journey afterwards, without a doubt. Yeah.
So, all right. So let's, we can circle back to some of the, I definitely want to talk about, what you're doing now and the other things you're interested in and get more into the book. But let's get to it because we've teased it. So, you definitely had personal experience. And I know you mentioned to me, other folks in this conversation of, of the challenges that come up sometimes, even with exits that anybody else would look at as successful, right? You said to me, you said to me in our pre-conversation, like, who would say it's a bad thing that, somebody can, play golf,
absolutely.
Play golf every day. So talk to us a little bit about the realities of that journey for you and the other folks that you've seen.
Well, I think the first reality is it took about 6 months to get through that. So that was a tough 6. I mean, you're working around the clock, so you're kind of done and you don't know what's what. Does that make sense? The wire comes in, you're done. That's a celebration. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But then you're going to wake up and it's going to be pretty empty. You got to start talking to your team. I got every one of my team members a job. So there was another divest of people that I had relationships with. And at the time, I lived on a golf course. And I just remember one of my neighbors saying, "Don't bet against Bill because he's going to beat you," because I was playing golf every day. And that sounds really good. Is it healthy? No. You miss the chaos. You miss the thinking. You miss all these different things. And then also, you don't qualify for EO anymore. So I'm like, oh, crap. I'm like, how am I going to get another $1 million producing company? So so I had to take a year off. I didn't even want to look at a computer because I was probably going to get sued because that was the non-compete. So yeah, we traveled, play golf. I mean, I still had young children. So, why is dad home today? Why, what's going on here? Right. So, and when you're on everybody else's vacation, a lot of other interesting things can happen. You're playing golf with buddies on their days off. So you can just put that math together. So it was interesting. I wouldn't want to do that again. I like having the balance. They always talk about the work-life. I call it harmony. How do we harmonize our work-life, efforts?
Yeah. So what is it, do you think, and I know you've also seen other people experience this,
Yes.
a fellow of yours, some of them. What do you think are the elements that really, I mean, it's, the easy answer is, we're built as entrepreneurs, and if we're not building something, we get bored or whatever. But I think there's a deeper conversation than that, right? Because there's a difference between being sort of antsy and true depression, which some people, I'm not saying every, but some people really like it. It's serious. So you want to delve a little deeper into that? Like what goes on for folks? Do you think, or anything you want to share personally as well?
I mean, so what's going to happen? The first thing that I noticed, now you're going to start worrying about something else, right? So as business leaders, let's say, so we're always fixing problems, worrying about clients, worrying about team members, worrying. But as soon as at the end of the day, you're going to start worrying about your money. Does that make sense? Like market conditions, this and that. So you get your advisors, but so when we jump back, we're like, okay, we got to figure something. What do we want to do? Yeah. So I got to do something. Should I go get a job? Well, that's not going to work because I'm psychologically unemployed. No one's going to hire me because I'm going to drive them crazy, right?
Yeah.
So we started looking at another model. We made some other investments in some businesses that didn't work. We thought we would do this. We thought we would do that. And that just wasn't doing it. So, after about a year or so, we dove right back into our business. That's what we know. That's
Yeah.
what we're good at. That's what we're talented at. And it didn't take long to just start doing exactly what we did back then. So,
What was, because I've seen this pattern a lot with people say, oh, I'm going to invest in other people's businesses, right?
sure.
Now I have this capital, whatever, they'll keep me in the game. And I'm not saying it doesn't work sometimes, but I would say the majority of folks I know who've done that, who are former, entrepreneurs, business owners who
Sure.
exited, they find that ultimately dissatisfying. They either stop doing it entirely, or maybe it's a side thing they do, but it's not it. What is it for you that was not like? Why wasn't that it? Like, what's the difference between investing in other people's businesses and actually running your own?
Angel investing type of a deal. I've had partnerships. I've done that before. And it just, you better be in alignment. You better be rowing in the right direction. And for me, it just, too many pitfalls, right? Like it wasn't structured like a real PE deal. That makes sense. Like I'm going to make an investment. How many businesses failed within the first 5 years? What's the stat?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, and then I also learned in my experience. So I've had people embezzle from me, partnerships and stuff. And there's just a lot that goes on in a business, right? You can't, if you just want to really sit back, put your feet up, is there really such a thing? I don't think so, but maybe I'm wrong. And you got to inspect what you expect, right? Like you got to look at these things and say, what's going on? And then you're right back in the business. I mean, so for me, I might as well just do it for myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm going to put that much effort into something, I might as well do it for
Might
myself.
as well do it for yourself.
Yeah.
And listen, you were fortunate that you only had a 1 year not compete. In many industries, many businesses, those not competes could be
forever.
3 or 5 years.
Forever. And then there was also the aftermath of, I'll never forget this conversation. Here's kind of when we talk about the aftermath. My phone blew up for several weeks. What's going on? Why'd you dump me? And these are friends and family. And then what you don't think about, what I didn't put in the equation. So I still owned the business. I just moved the book, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. So that they didn't want the business. So I might as well keep it. It's got my name attached to it. I've done it for 30 years. They didn't do a very good job. Are you following me? Like they were horrible. And I remember calling the CEO saying, hey, I'm getting multiple complaints. The service is not there. And I remember this CEO of a PE firm going, hey, listen, we have X amount of accounts and you don't. So don't ever make this phone call again. Then I'm like, ooh, okay, well, this isn't good. So you got to think about stuff like that too. And that's a kick in the shin because you're like, oh my gosh, I have friends and family that are not going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And that was tough. Think about that, Corey. That drove me into like, oh my Lord, what do I do? And I can't just jump in and I just can't take that account back. I just can't. That's not part of the agreement. That's going to get me in a lot of trouble. I can't do that.
Yeah.
And since then, Corey, they're out of business, by the way. They filed bankruptcy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you get your money out of it before?
Oh, hey, we negotiated the deal. It was a 95.5 and I'm getting my money in the 90 days after they finish out, and I wasn't doing this 1 year. I wasn't doing any of that. I said, here's the terms. Here's what we're doing. And if you don't like it, that's okay. I can keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And have you, in terms of other folks who've exited, and what have you seen in terms of their journey? I mean, are all of them, starting another business? Have any of them found other things that they want to focus on? What have you seen?
I can think of multiple people that have gone through this, and most of them, I think you can attest this. Most people get back into what they've done. They don't really do much different. They do what they've been doing because that's what they know.
Yeah.
I see that time and time again. And yes, I've seen some that are crazy happy and crazy successful. But that's not the majority. That's a small percentage. But they all do something. They're all going to get into something because that's just our DNA.
Yeah, it's interesting. And, the other thing that I've heard from folks is like, so many folks have their identity tied up in that business.
Oh, yeah.
And when they don't have it anymore, it's like, they barely even know who they are, honestly, and maybe that you can judge that. Maybe you can say, well, people should have, more identity outside of their business in the beginning. But the reality is, it is what it is. That's what it is. Entrepreneurs are.
It is what it is. And I agree. It's something, think about this. If you're running something for 30 years and you're putting whatever the time frame is each week, 40 hours, 30 hours, 80 hours, that's in your DNA. That doesn't go away, right? So, and that's why the entrepreneur journey is so interesting and it fascinates me. Everybody, and you hear about everybody saying they want the big exit, but you better have something ready on the backside for you to do.
Yeah.
Take a week off, take a month off, but you're going to be getting right back at it. That's just my experience, right? We speak through experience. And that's what I have learned.
Yeah, it's interesting. You and I were talking a little bit before we went on air that, I've seen, I can only think of one exception where, remember, we closed the deal. This guy had run a company for 20 something years. He was in his, I think, early 50s at that time. So, still had some time and gas in the tank. And he said he was done. And I can't tell you how many people I know have said, tell me they're done. And the quickest one I ever saw, one of my clients said he's done 3 days later.
Wow.
This next company, 3 days later. Okay.
No, but I mean, if you come home every day, your kids come home from school and dad's sitting on the couch doing nothing. I mean, what does that trickle down to your family? Like, think about that. It's like, what is everybody going to see? And they don't know how much money you got. They don't know. So I want my kids to be productive. I mean, you know what I'm saying? They just can't see dad. What's dad doing here again, right? Like, get him out of here. And I think your spouse might be the same way, or your significant other, like, get this guy out of here, right? Like,
Yeah. There was only one guy I can think of. I mean, he walked out with about, I don't know, 20 million bucks. And,
wow, good for him.
And we said, but we sort of said, oh, no, he's not going to be able to, he'll be back, the banker on the deal, lawyer, me, the consultant, we were all like bad, like taking a little pool on how quickly he'd be back.
Yeah, I get it. Same thing in my form. Same thing.
And he was the only one that surprised us. And as far as I know, I haven't talked to him in a little bit, but I knew, a good 10, 12 years later, he was still, he and his wife had a dream to literally, they bought like an Airstream luxury, motorhome thing and spent a year going around the country. That was their dream.
Nice.
And then I said, okay. So then we all thought, okay, they'll do that for a year. He'll get that out of the system and then he'll come back and, then they built this amazing house on the beach down in Ponte Vedra. They did the last knockdown of the old home there and built this. And it was all right. When when he gets done with the house, he'll be but no, he seems very happy. They travel, they do whatever, but clearly
more power to him.
Yeah.
Good for him. Everybody's success journey is different. Everybody's journey is different, right? So that's his journey, and I get it. But some are just not built for that journey.
Yeah. Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can tell you about an incredible resource my team and I have put together for you. Secrets of Deal-Driven Growth, Creative Ways to Grow Your Business, Even in Challenging Times, is a powerful ebook that helps you take DealQuest podcast episodes and apply them to your own life and business. This is the ideal tool for anyone looking for creative ways to grow as deal makers, and you can get yours now. It's as easy as heading to coreycupfer.com/workbook and downloading your copy. While you're there, you can also consider joining our dynamic deal-driven community of founders, experts, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. Now back to the show. So let's talk about this book.
Yeah, let's talk.
Yeah, no cattle. Tell me a little bit more about it.
Oh, this is a good one. You'll like this story. So obviously when you sell your business, you got a 1-year non-compete, you get kind of antsy. So I started writing. And do you remember The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley?
Yeah, sure.
Great book. I mean, it changed my life. I read that at 16. I was 16 or 17. And if you remember in that book, they talked about big hat, no cattle. That's where it all came from.
Oh, right.
So it's obviously a finance book. What you see is not what you get. But in our security and integration business, we do background search for our clients. So you may have a new client. You want to check them out. We can do that for you. But what I learned is we would go work on these multimillion-dollar homes. We would do work. And I'm a handshake kind of guy. I still am, even though I've gotten burned by that mentality. I'm sure as a lawyer, you're going to tell me not to do that. But, but people wouldn't pay us on all this work. I'm like, what is the deal? Why are these people in these big homes not paying us? So I would do a background search. And, they were so up to debt in their eyeballs. Like, it was like, how do these people survive? And just because you make a lot of money doesn't mean you have wealth. Yes. True wealth is when your money makes money. And then Then I went to my banks. I've got a lot of I have ownership in a few banks, and I would go to my banks and I say, hey, I would really like to look at a couple files of these demographics. And they would take the names out. I'd look at the P&Ls. I'd look at their files. And then they would say, hey, we'll get permission to see if you can go interview these people. Okay. So I'd interview different people knowing their backgrounds and their financial background. And deck of millionaires in a 3,000-foot house with an F-150 and a Toyota Camry was to me, it was the biggest sign of success because you did not, from the outside, you had no clue. And then I would do the analyticals on these big homes, and they really didn't. They had these flashy cars and big house, but they didn't have any equity. It was all debt. And, even though a lot of these people were dressed up in expensive suits, where I learned that the tradesmen were probably the most successful in their old beat up trucks. And I mean, it just a huge learning curve on that. Like, so that's why you have to respect everybody. You just don't know, right? Like, trust and respect is such a big thing. And not from all spectrums, but what you see is not what you get. And that's what the whole book is about. And all through growing up, my parents were very frugal, Roy or Corey, and they would say, we'd see something flashy, right? The book Traction, it talks about the shiny things, right? And they'd always say, big hat, no cap, because we read that in the book of Thomas Stanley. So that's kind of where it all came from. So these are just things that were driven into me since I was just a young person from my parents.
And is the book interviews, or it's just you reflecting the lessons you learned from some?
Just me reflecting.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. And I'll tell you, I mean, listen, I wrote my authentic negotiating book, and, obviously, I used to be an avid reader. I got to tell you, I read less now just because of time, but I actually love to read still. And I got to tell you something. I sort of respect people generally, whether it's money, not money, but also I always had respect for authors because I knew they were great. But I got to tell you, when I wrote the book, I got a higher level of respect because what it takes to write, to write a good book. I mean, listen, if you want to throw together something, but I don't know if you've heard this joke that goes around EO, but we have many of these things that go around entrepreneurial organization, right? One of them, at least in New York and my forum at the time, was always that, most business books should be an article. They have an article worth of value, and then they have another 150 pages where they just say it in a different way or tell the same story over and over again. And I was so intent on nobody ever being able to say that about my book, like that every page of value. And, it took a lot. So I got a huge amount of respect for authors, So, I see you nodding. You have a similar experience when you wrote your book.
Oh, yeah. And I'm working on my second book, which I'm getting ready to take to the publisher. But it was really fascinating. It was all leadership on, all these different things about leadership and business. And then my author kept asking me these questions, Corey, and it was like, where's this coming from? And I'm like, I don't know, experience. I didn't really know. And then it was a thought-provoking question as we really started looking at the foundation of all these chapters. I couldn't answer the thought-provoking question, but it was like, all this stuff you're writing about is kind of biblical. Like, where does all of our leadership stuff come from? Like integrity and ethics and foundation. And all these different things. And so now we've kind of changed it a little bit. And I'm not going to tell you I'm the most religious guy on the planet, but it's really interesting. You start reading like Proverbs and stuff. You don't have to be religious to read this stuff, but it blows your mind on some of the things that come along with that. So we're probably going to be ready to publish this here in the next month or two is what I'm hoping for.
Oh, nice. That's great. That's the one it says in your bio about a book about success with religious values.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah,
that's great.
Cool.
That's great. And is this a major publisher, a business hybrid publisher, or self-publisher?
I don't have a major publisher. Dave Ramsey actually turned me down. I did have conversations with them. So I did try it. Damn you, Dave. But I have a publisher, that mid-sized publisher, nothing crazy. It's not Random House or anybody like that. But
that's what I did. I actually did my book with, he was Neo member, and I think he still is, with Advantage Publishing, with Adam Woody's company is Neo, or out of Charleston. So great. My wife's actually working on her second book. She's got her second major publishing deal. She's way more impressive than I am.
Like it. That's cool. You're pretty impressive, Corey. Don't let them tell you different.
No, hey man. I'm very, who was it? My last podcast interview, the guest talked about how, I said anything else, with business success and whatever. And it was interesting. He said, this may be something that people will say or whatever, but he says, I think the business hack is having a great marriage or life partner, right? Absolutely. Like that's all. And I said, listen, I'm blessed in that way. So I'm with it.
Love it. Hey, I think I learned, we just got back from Eccentric. We were in Fort Worth all last week, and two biggest takeaways. Number one was gratitude. From highly successful entrepreneurs every morning, instead of getting up and thinking about what your problems are, what are you grateful for? And failure. Those are the two things that I picked up the most at our event last week.
I love it. So listen, you've run so many companies, you've had some exits. You now, went back into the business, and is your thinking, and now you have this experience of sort of knowing, hey, I don't want to sit around and play golf, even if I'm on a golf course. But, do you have any exit plans with this business? Or, are you going to retire? Are you a die with my boots on guy? Are you, going to retire? So what's you thinking?
I'm waiting. I've got a daughter that's a sophomore at Fayetteville in Arkansas. So we'll see what happens there. I've got another daughter that's 12. So a little, but so I don't know what that handoff looks like. I don't know. So, but I have had some major changes in the business because let's face it. Corey, how long have you been a lawyer? How many years?
38.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So 30 years of being an integrator, I kind of said, I'm going to try something a little, I'm going to pivot a little bit. So I started IMAX Digital.
Okay.
And this creative side came out of me. So if you remember the model over at my company, GSS, Global Inc., we gave away alarm systems, right? We talked about that for subscription. So in this new model, we are giving away websites, like these nice 15-page websites for a $49. We handle all the build out of 15 pages. We handle all the SSL. We bought a really fast server. And we do all your changes moving forward. And we have some other CRM tools and some other things that we're doing. So same model, different format, right? So my wife always laughs at me. She's like, you're a great salesman. Can you find something that has a little bit more money? But I'm like, but these little subscriptions are worth a lot on the balance sheet, but you have to invest to get them. So we've always been an investment company. We've never put out a bad product because they always say if it's free, it's too good to be true, blah, 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 but not with what we do. So, but learning the integration and learning the security business, we had to give so many systems away. We were broke for many years. I mean, that's just a matter of fact. I had to learn servers. I had to learn how to build a website. I had to learn all these different tools that I know very well. And boom, we're just applying these to a different operation.
So so I get the similarities in the model. And listen, I mean, there's all kinds of these classic examples of, they used to say, loss leaders, right? With supermarkets use it all the time, right? Sell a typewriter back in the day, at cost to make money off the ribbons, right?
That's right. You got it.
That was like the classic, all-time example of that. And there's so many business models that do that. So in this current business, what is it, what's the back end, revenue stream from doing very inexpensive websites, sounds like, yeah.
Well, it's so the $49 a month. I mean, even to get the servers we provide, GoDaddy would charge you $100 a month to that servers, just for the server space alone, but very thin margins. But we have IMAX Digital is a really nice toolkit that starts at $29. We have some hyperlocal. So at the end of the day, average client spends about $100, but some of the other things that we do, and we just build the relationship is all we do. And then we just, hey, if they just take a website and we're making 15, 20 bucks a month, I'm okay with that. If we could do that, if I can do that 25,000 times, Corey, you see the model, and that's kind of what we look at. And I've always been kind of a balance sheet guy. I'd rather grow the balance sheet than I would the P&L. And I'm sure every EO member might strike me down, but we've always grown on the balance. And that, again, if there was an exit, you've got that value. That's always, and this stuff, in the security industry, you can flip a book of business in 3 to 6 months. So it's the same thing with digital. It's not, so it's no different than a stock. It's the same thing as the way I look at it. We're investing, if you remember putting money away each month when you're a kid, or even like now, you're always investing money. It's the same concept, no different.
Fascinating. By the way, I did not put money away as a kid. So one of the things I regret, like my parent, like I didn't even understand that. So one of our fellow EM members, David Bach, who wrote Automatic Millionaire and Finish Rich and Latte Factor's latest one, he talks about his grandma Rose, who bought him a stock when he was a kid, whatever. I didn't have a grandma Rose. I didn't have, my parents didn't invest. They were low middle class. So I really wish I understood. I understood that, early on, but fortunately I've been able to catch up.
So one of the things in my book, and this is pretty cool. My mom, she's got 9 grandkids, has never bought them a toy. So she's kind of boring at the events, like the birthday parties, but they get continued stock. And some of their portfolios right now are really, really nice. And imagine being 25, and I think she cuts it loose as soon as they get out of college at 21 or 22.
Yeah.
The healthy fun with a lot of money, and what are you going to do? And all that plastic throughout the years would be in a landfill, that this is something that's still producing.
What a great idea. What a great idea. I love that.
Incredible. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And there's another thing that you mentioned, earlier about, this conversation of building wealth. I remember it took me until, well into my career. Like I mentioned this before, but she's actually Barbara Usan, she actually mainly works with women, and she's a friend of my wife's. And we had just one conversation many years ago, what she said to me, she said, I understand. You know how to produce income. You know how to produce revenue and profit.
Yeah.
Said, you don't know how to build wealth.
Yeah.
Because I would make all this money and it would go, whether it was to charity, whether it was to spending, whether it was to whatever. And that shifted something in my mind years ago that had me, since build wealth. So it's interesting, this kind of stuff. And when we learn it is really fascinating. And then the other thing that's really fascinating to me is business models, right? Because I'm always like, it's almost like an opposite business model in that we are high margin, low volume, right?
Sure. I'm the exact opposite. Like,
exactly, exactly. And that's one of the things I love, because there's nothing, there's no wrong or right. And
no, there's not.
any given model can work if you do it right. And there's no one that's better than the other, except to the extent that it fits your talents and skills and ability to build it and execute on it.
And I've always thought about, if I have a lot of micro clients and I lose 20%, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a blow if I only had 10 clients and I lose 20%.
Yeah.
So that's always been our mindset. Like, and I don't know why, I don't know where that came from, but that's where it all happened.
Yeah, yeah, and listen again. Know thyself, right? It's clearly
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, you're very clear on what you.
I have people right now that look at my digital agency and they're like, "You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind." I'm like, "Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's check in with me in about 5 years. We'll see how we're doing." Right? So,
yeah. Well, considering your track history, I wouldn't bet against you. Let's put it that way.
I'm in. I'm in. I'm all in on this deal. So yeah, that'd be a good bet.
I remember, I wish I could attribute it to where this came from, but I remember learning this at an EO event, which really makes sense, is that you have price, you have quality, and you have service.
I know,
right?
The three. Yep.
The triangle, right?
Yep. You only get two of the three, right?
And that's right. And you only get two of the three. Like, it's near impossible to do, it's pretty impossible to do all three. And if you study certain businesses, you can see where they fit. There are some that actually focus almost on the one, like, Walmart, about pricing and whatever, right? Everything. Like, I have people who've done deals with Walmart, and, everything's about every penny they can squeeze out of the margin. They have mismatched chairs in their office, their furniture, like everything about their culture is about saving money. But so some are really focused mainly on one. But if you look at most businesses that are successful, they have two, right? They're either like, so, you're not high price, right?
I can do all three, Corey.
Yeah.
I really can. I mean, we do it every day. Like, our alarm integration company, we have never put a bad product in, ever. We use the highest quality equipment.
Yeah.
Because from a service perspective, if I have to keep rolling trucks over and over and over, it'll kill me. My tiny margins will get crushed. So we have to be the highest quality.
Yes.
And we used a lot of it as a loss leader just to get the phone to ring, right? And
yeah.
So we've been advertising forever a $12 monitoring rate. Then then they want this and they want that. Usually at the end of the day, we're at that $30 to $34.99 range. So, it makes the phone ring. It works. They have a lot of different options I can pick.
Well, I mean, you can just tell it. You're really in your element, right? These kind of business models fit you perfectly. You can just tell. I mean, this is what you were made to do, and I love that.
Much.
One of the things I love about entrepreneurs is, especially the ones that, truly find their highest, best use, their talent, their special sauce, whatever you want to call it, and execute on that. I think one of the things that, it's interesting. You talk about entrepreneurs very independently minded. Obviously, we're unemployable, all this kind of stuff. But I still sometimes see, especially with young entrepreneurs, them following, because, even in the entrepreneur world, even though you don't have a boss, there's certain quote unquote wisdom out there on how you have to do something that is not always accurate. It's not for everybody, right? So, the fact that you're clear on the models, on the things that work for you, on the kind of business that you can be successful at is great. Good stuff.
And we have fun doing it. It's a lot of fun. We like messing with our clients, having a good time. It's fun. Build it. And it's all about building relationships. You're never going to get a referral unless you can build a relationship.
Yeah.
And, Darwin, once the trust opens up, well, they will buy a lot of stuff from you. It's a fact.
Sure. Love that. All right. Well, I'm coming to my last two questions.
Okay.
Is there anything else more, on the deal front? Any lessons from, any of these exit deals or anything else you've seen that we haven't covered that you want to cover? Otherwise, we can hop to the last two questions.
Keep investing in yourself, obviously. Take care of yourself. That's the first thing. Keep investing in something else. We just had Emmett Smith down in Fort Worth, and he just said, every year I bought a piece of real estate. That's what Jerry Jones told me to do from when I was young in football. And I don't know what he's got going on now, but he's got a lot of good stuff. So it was just that fundamental of being dumb enough to ask. Does that make sense? Like, if you need help, ask. I've learned this in so many different ways. And Emmett just told us, I asked Jerry during lunch at practice, can I just come sit in your office and listen to you do deals because I want to learn? Yeah. I thought that was cool, right? So we have to have that mindset of learn and grow. What's our core values in EO, right? I mean, trust, respect, learn and grow. And I think that was a pretty cool thing to see.
Love that. That's a great story. So if people want to find out more about you, your books, your businesses, where should they go?
They can go to BillDavey.com, which is BillDavey.com, or they can email bill@ImaxDigital.com. And I'm easy to find. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find, Corey. So we're around.
Awesome. Great. So, Bill, my final question on the podcast is always about my highest value in life, which is freedom. And for me, that means everything from freedom around the world for all people from oppression to why I'm an entrepreneur and haven't had a boss for decades. What does freedom mean to you, and how does it impact your life and business?
Wow. I mean, freedom's everything, right? Like if you ever traveled the country or outside the country and been to some of these other places, I think it goes right back to that gratitude piece, right? Does that make sense? Like if you see how other people live, we had an MMA fighter last week, Justin Wren, talking about true slavery and people in other countries and things that I think right now people on this call probably took their shower this morning for granted, because we're like a 1 or 2% of the world that, just to get a shower in the morning, but just water. I mean, think Justin Wren was talking about how he's out building wells because we take that for granted. So for me, freedom is just the little things. Wake up in the morning, have some gratitude, look out your window. A lot of people, there's a phrase that hurt people. There's a lot of miserable people on the planet, and everything is just taken for granted. So for me, freedom is just the simplest things in life. To me, that's what it's all about.
I love that answer. Bill Davey, thanks for being such a great guest on the DealQuest podcast.
Thank you, Corey. It was an honor today. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. I want to invite you to a unique way to tap into the wisdom and experience of the DealQuest community. The Deal Den is a place where entrepreneurs, high-level executives, and business leaders come together, support each other's growth and success, and share what's working best, as well as what challenges we are facing right now. You will get input not only from me, but from all of our members. We collaborate and serve each other. To join us, go to corykupfer.com/dealden. I'll see you there. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.